Hello, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and today we have activist and social impact consultant Jamira Burley. She served under Mayor Michael Nutter in Philadelphia as the youngest executive director of that city in its history, and started to speak out against gun violence at a very early age after the murder of her brother, Andre. And she joins us today.
Thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. Thank you so much. This is an extraordinary life story, and you're only beginning. But the circumstances around your life are compelling and shocking in a way. We always begin by asking our guests to place themselves in Black America, but
yeah,
do that for us. You're growing up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I grew up in Philadelphia very much as a result of the war on drugs and the drug epidemic that took place both in Philadelphia and many Black communities around this country. And I grew up surrounded by 15 siblings many of them, all 10 of my older brothers and both of my parents kind of moved in and out of the criminal justice system in some capacity.
So 10 brothers.
There's 13 brothers out of the 16 of us.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
It's a large family.
Right, but 10 of those went in,
yeah.
or all of them?
All 10 of them have been incarcerated for either short or long periods of time. And growing up, seeing that happen every single day, it made me think that it was the thing that's supposed to happen. It was people are supposed to get incarcerated. People are supposed to go to lose their life to gun violence.
But a lot of this is drug activity.
Yeah, most of it was drug activity or participating in a violent activity. So they got into fights and stuff like that in schools.
But guns are a definite part of it. Your mom as well?
Yes.
In and out, and now your father is serving a life sentence.
Yep, he's serving a life sentence in Virginia for murder. Yeah.
For murder. Wow. Okay. So Andre, talk to us about him.
Yeah. So Andre was the moment in which I realized that I had to do something. In 2005, Andre, my 20-year-old brother, was shot and killed in his home by a person he had brought in as who was homeless, and he brought in and allowed to live with him. The person decided to rob him in his sleep, and he shot him in his head. Andre unfortunately died due to that injury, and for me it was the moment of clarity to make me realize that I needed to do something to ensure that other people weren't dealing with the same circumstances.
Sure. Andre was 20 and you were how old then?
I was 15 years old.
15. Well, we have a clip of you. We were just looking at this. You're not much older than that now, but let's take a look at the clip of her in her younger years of activism.
We refuse to live in a city where violence is daily and murder is common. We refuse to be afraid to walk down our own blocks. We refuse to allow another person fall victim to a bullet. So we have come here today to stand on our state capitol to demand to the world and shout out loud that we are fed up.
Right. We're all fed up.
Yes.
Yeah, so you were 15. So that's a big, first of all, there are two things here. Number one, you somehow escaped that path that the entire rest of your family seemed to have been following. How was that?
It was hard. It was a reckoning that I had to find within myself to realize that I wanted more for myself, and that, not saying that my family members didn't, but I think I was living in a community where people were so boggled down with hopelessness and they didn't know a way out. But through my activism, I was really able to find pathways. I was lucky. Pathways to education, pathways to extracurricular activities that people in my community just didn't have access to.
Right, so you were 15 when...
15 years ago. I'm now 30 now, yeah.
Now
According to my sisters, I'm ancient, yeah.
Ancient 30, right. I still trying to imagine what was going... How did you do that? Or was there someone who mentored you, who took your hand and said, you can do better than this? Or was it just your own inner voice that got you...
Every single major moment in my life, I've been helped and guided by Black women who have held their hand out to me, opened doors, and pulled out seats for me. And when I was 15 and my brother was killed, I remember going to school filled with so much anger and rage that my principal noticed the change in my behavior. And her and my counselor pulled me to the side, and I remember telling her what happened, and she turned to me with a very straight face and said, well, you can be a victim or you can do something about it. And I think that was the first time anyone had told me that I had power, that I could do something to change the circumstances of my life. And I think that motivated me to see how far I could take that power and who I could use that power in support of.
Well, it seems that you took it quite a distance. At that early age, you were given a grant to help stop violence in the schools. Tell us about that, because that was a substantial $50,000.
Yeah. So as a result of Andre being killed, my principal allowed me, I created this program called the Panther Peace Corps at Overbrook High School, where we trained high school students how to be violence interrupters and to influence their peers to do something else and to talk their issues out. And we were so successful that we reduced the violent rate or the crime rate at Overbrook High School by nearly 30% in 12 months. And so Governor Everendell, his staff gave us a $50,000 grant to implement that same program into the top 10 persistently dangerous high schools to replicate teaching students how to be their own advocate and to really be the ones in their community kind of turning the knob and influencing their classmates to do something else.
So are those methods that you started back then still being taught somewhere around in school systems?
Yeah, it was adopted by the school district overall, where they used it now as a part of their restorative justice practices. Many students are still taught how to be violence interrupters, still taught how to be mediators, and to kind of work in collaboration with both the students and the administration in a way that's protective of the students, while also not going against school policy.
I'm curious to know what is the key to being a violence interrupter? What's the major thing that you have to be aware of?
I think anyone can be a violence interrupter, and we were deliberate in that. We recognized that the basketball players, the chess players, the mock trial team members, that all of them had influence over their subgroup of friends, and all of them had the potential to be violence interrupters. And so we trained them how to have conversations with folks to actually find out why they were angry, or what baggage did they bring to school with them that made them react a certain way. Or oftentimes we found that many students were acting out because they didn't have anywhere to wash their clothes, or they didn't eat that morning, or they felt like they were being targeted by a teacher. And I think we were able to really build a bridge between students and oftentimes the administration, who look at them as a burden and don't really ask them what's wrong and try to find out why they're responding the way that they do.
So you wound up being able to go to Temple University because of all of this activism, but where were you living then? Give us a picture of your life you're 15, you're still going to school, you have all of this, imprisonment going on around you.
So when I was 15 years old, maybe 6 months after my brother was killed, I actually moved out of my mom's house to go and live with my aunt, who's her older sister. And I did so because I realized that the circumstances that I was surrounded by was toxic. I was living in a community where violence happened every single day. And it was also a community where many people didn't think that they could go to college. I wanted that for myself. And so I went to live with my aunt, who got me involved in a whole bunch of extracurricular activities, because she's like, if you have time, you need to be doing something. So I remember—
That's a good motto, right?
I agree.
Right.
Idle time leads to idle mind.
Right.
And so I became a member of the National Black MBA Association Leaders of Tomorrow program, and they equipped high school students how to use Harvard business case competitions to look at evidence and look at cases to create campaigns and really use the business model to impact your community. And I really became very interested in that work, to the point where I knew I wanted to go to college to major in business, to find out how business could help to solve some of the most serious problems our society are impacted by.
Well, that's quite a trajectory, but
Long time.
we're only starting with the story, because then it was President Obama who became your boss. So let's talk a little bit about that, how that happened.
So in 2015, I was selected by the White House to be a champion of change through my work around gun violence prevention. And that allowed me a larger platform to, one, work with communities around the country who were doing similar work for different communities. So whether it was working with the Everytowns of the world, who were looking at how do we bring mothers into the conversation, or Mayors Against Illegal Guns, who were trying to influence policymakers to act and do something, particularly for the boys and men of color who had been impacted largely by gun violence, or working with community organizations on how to teach them how to engage young people. So it really allowed me to take my work to the next level, and to also expand my work beyond just gun violence. because gun violence is oftentimes a reaction to much deeper systematic problems. And now a lot of the work I focus on is trying to alleviate those problems by ensuring every child has access to education, or ensuring that they have access to clean housing and access to livable wage. All of those things are important to ensure that people don't use violence as a tool for getting food or for protecting themselves.
Yeah, you were saying that your work as a consultant, working with the Global Business Council. Tell us about that, because I was so interested in your descriptions of the kinds of children you're working with.
Yeah, so as like any millennial, we don't have one job, we have multiple. My 9 to 5 is I work as the head of youth engagement and skills for the Global Business Coalition for Education. And we are a coalition of businesses around the world who are helping to advise business leaders and companies like the Microsofts, the Intels of the world, on how they invest in global education for the most marginalized. So children on the move, who are children leaving conflict zones, or refugee youth who are leaving their community because of natural disasters, or girls' education, or boys of men of color. All of those minority groups who are oftentimes left out of the conversation, we need to recognize that their quality education is not only the right thing to do, but it also helps our economy when people are able to fully participate, when they have the skills to get jobs.
So you have corporations, businesses who are donating funds, and people.
They're donating funds, they're giving TA technical assistance, they're helping provide technology in many of these remote communities. So not only villages in like Sudan, but also communities here in the United States.
Right, because we need them as well, as people so often forget, that we're talk about feeding the hungry around the world, when we needed to do that with our people here.
Yeah, and the numbers are devastating. We're looking at 1.8 billion young people, the largest population the world has ever seen. 825 million of them are not on track to receive the skills they need by 2030 to enter the workforce. So what does that mean for violence? What does that mean for child marriage? What does that mean for conflict zones? What does that mean for our economy at whole if these people are not able to participate?
That's pretty scary. And where are they? I know there's children on the move, people and all of that, but where do you see them?
They're everywhere. They're here in the U.S. The largest populations of young people are on the continent of Africa and in many parts of Asia. The continent of Africa, many of their young people are, I want to say more than 60% of their population is under the age of 25, which is vast. And so the work that needs to happen not only here in the U.S., but also abroad, because these young people are moving between countries, right? The jobs are moving beyond borders. And so we need to ensure that the skills represent not only the jobs of the future, but where these young people can have them regardless of where they decide to live. Right.
So now, one of the other jobs that you've had in this great long life of
history
is working for the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Yes.
So talk to us about that. What did you expected her to win, of course?
I wanted her to win. So I left my job at Amnesty International in 2016, where I was leading the gun violence and criminal justice work, to be the Deputy Millennial Vote Director for Hillary, where I worked on national strategies and state-based strategies on how to engage millennials. So adult millennials, first-generation millennials, LGBTQ, Latina millennials, or Hispanic millennials, to really think about what are the strategies, what are the issues they care about, and how can we help to address those issues in a policy way. And I wanted her to win because I thought she was movable. I didn't think she was a white savior. I didn't think she was perfect. I thought she was someone who understood policy. I thought she was someone who understood the government, and that with the right facts presented itself, she would make a decision that oftentimes would benefit the vast majority of people. And it didn't hurt that she also had a lot of Black women surrounding her that made my job that much easier.
Right. Well, speaking of Black women, just reading in the paper, they are holding presidential forums, targeting states, going in to see what. Talk to us about the power of Black women in politics. It's extraordinary.
No, the Black women have been the backbone of the Democratic Party forever. And I think now is a clear indication that the Democratic Party is finally waking up and taking notice, which is why we saw Stacey Abrams give the response to the State of the Union, which was flawless. But it's amazing. And now it shows that people are recognizing that Black women have not only influence, we raise money, we can move communities, and we actually show up to the polls every single time. And so it's powerful.
Sounds like you're going to get back in.
I think it would depend. We'll see.
Right. Well, we've got everybody running: black women, you know, gay people. I mean, everybody.
Yeah.
You know.
No, it's exciting. I think it's exciting because the first time I voted for a president was Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton in 2008. Then I got to vote on a woman's candidacy who won the Democratic nomination, which, like, historically, it's phenomenal. But I think I would have to believe in the candidate. I would have to believe that he or she represents the communities that I live and work in, and that the question I have to ask myself is, could I do more harm than good if I was working externally or internally within a campaign?
So you see that as a definite. You get swallowed up in a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my voice is a little bit more flexible when I'm externally. You know, I can throw shade all I want at whoever I want. So we'll see. Hopefully a woman candidate if I get back in.
Great, great. So I want to go back a little bit, because there are young women and men looking at you, perhaps in similar circumstances and family circumstances. What do you say to them? Because as I sit here and look at you, knowing, you know, what happened in your young life, I'm shocked, amazed that you made it out. So talk to those young women and young men who are watching this show to show them the way out.
Yeah, there's no one way out, right? And I think that oftentimes we feel like our circumstances, we're the only ones experiencing our circumstances. But to your point, there are people who are dealing with similar, if not worse, situations. I think the goal is to really recognize you may not know what you want to do in life, but the question is, do you know what you don't want? Do you not want to live paycheck to paycheck? Do you not want to be a victim of violence or be considered just a victim and not a survivor? Do you want to enable your community to do better and to thrive? And oftentimes that needs to first happen with yourself before you can go back to your community and do any real change. And so for anyone listening who's trying to figure out like how they themselves can do the work, the question is, first be your own superhero, like not expecting for anyone to come in and save you, and try to really take advantage of all the opportunities that are around you, even the ones that seem unattainable. Why not? Like, I live with the understanding that Jim Why Not, for instance, my organization that I started was created recognizing that we live in a time where young people are asking the question, why not me? Why not now? And why not? And so I think young people just need to ask themselves that question over and over again until they are able to get to an answer that will most likely be why not? Because you are the one you've been waiting for. You have the potential to change your own circumstances.
And for the seemingly intractable problem of gun violence.
Yeah.
Are you, what do you think now? We've had Parkland, we've had.
Yeah, I was very discouraged after Sandy Hook. When you have
small
babies,
children.
Yeah, when you have
Babies.
like if a country can look the other way when you have small babies being pulled out of, be put in body bags or ushered out of school, traumatized, I thought we had entered a new realm. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that young people are being more encouraged, are organizing in ways that they have never done before, younger than they have before, and aren't taking no for an answer and are pushing back to politicians in a way that I think are forcing politicians to respond and to think more critically about how they show up, not just for their older constituents who can actually vote, but also the younger ones who memory isn't like their memory is pretty long and they'll remember, and they're showing that they still have power regardless of whether or not they can vote on election day.
And for families so impacted by the use of drugs or selling of drugs or drug trafficking.
Yeah. It's devastating. I mean, Black people never got the sympathy that white folks are getting now with the opioid crisis. And we're still seeing the devastation of that, not just with those who were addicted to forms of drugs, but also those who were incarcerated, and even those who were incarcerated for things like marijuana.
Exactly.
You see white people who are now like thriving in the marijuana business. So it's definitely discouraging, which is why I think it's even more important that we ask politicians, what is their strategy for Black America? How are they going to ensure that the policies and practices that have been put into place are actually helpful and are looking at the long-term repercussions of many of the things like the war on drugs, like slavery, had on to the progress for many of our communities that we come from.
Will you run yourself, you think?
No.
No?
I can say now, no. I don't know what's going to happen in years to come, but definitely now, no.
Yeah, because, I do some work on the Equal Rights Amendment, and as we go from state to state, what we're finding is that people usually dismiss the city council and the state as Senate, the state representatives and all. But seriously, this is where power begins to impose itself. That one person sitting in a committee chairpersonship can control, the equal rights for 166 million women just by saying no, And so I think that getting in politics and getting in it at an early age and at a level where you are like AOC, one-to-one. What do you think about her, as a matter of fact?
I love her.
Yeah?
I love her energy. I love that she's forcing politicians to answer questions that they've never had to answer before, whether it's on Twitter or in person.
Right.
I think she's a fresh breath of fresh air. And I think we need it in Washington because otherwise we've had a lot of old men making decisions for very diverse communities for too long. And so I may not agree with every single thing she says, but I think she has the right to say it.
Who are the other people that you think are doing the right thing?
I like Senator Kamala Harris. I like Castro. I like Maxine Waters, of course.
My gosh.
Maxine Waters. I like all, actually, most of the new Congress members I do like. I think because they provide a level of texture to a very whitewashed congressional membership for so long that allows for us as a country to realize we're dealing with a multitude of personalities, identities, and issues, and how can we sit at a table and really discuss them in a way where those who are impacted by these issues are actually represented by that person that looks like them.
Some of them have gotten themselves into big trouble.
They have, but
yes.
I mean,
what do you think about actually having to pass a resolution in the House of Representatives against hate, theoretically inspired by one woman's comments?
I just think the fact that that happened days after a Congress member was more concerned about being labeled a racist versus actually dealing with racism goes to show you that this country picks and chooses its battles of when it decides what is hate, and also whether or not it's hate depending on who's feeling the hate and what they're saying. Because a white man has said worse, if not more cruel things, and they made themselves all the way up to, let's say, the White House, and are running this country as a whole. And so we can have a Cheeto in chief actually leading this country with some of the racist, homophobic, xenophobic comments he has made. I think we're dealing with a much deeper systematic issue than just one woman who happens to also be Muslim.
Pretty extraordinary comment. I keep thinking about the young faces that are there and how they are going to change both parties, actually. I mean, although the young faces haven't quite shown up in the Republican Party yet.
No, not yet.
But talk to me about the strength of that. How does Nancy Pelosi, first of all, do you think she's doing a good job at managing, the new kids on the block and, the ones who've been there for 20 years?
I think so. And I think her, like many older folks, have much improvement to make. I think we need to recognize as a country that if we tell young people for so long to shut up, sit down, we can't expect them to lead. So I think this is a great opportunity to show how we intergenerationally can actually create solutions that are in the betterment of this country versus just having our more seasonal folks make all the decisions for every single community without actually hearing from them. So I'm excited about the young people who are in Congress, who have new ideas, who are forcing conversations we never had before, whether we're talking about reparations or the Green New Deal, or whether we're talking about the border wall or ensuring we have a pathway to citizenship. Like, all of these conversations can happen together, especially when we have young people who are thinking differently than those who have been in office for 30 years. And young people also are less concerned with being reelected. They just want to do what's right. And I think that's admirable in a time where people are just trying to get reelected.
Right. That's for sure. We always ask our guests near the closing of a show to finish the statement, the power, the strength of Black America, what would you say that
The
is?
power of the strength of Black America is in the Black woman. Trust Black women. Let Black women lead.
Whoa, whoa.
That's what I'll say.
That's what you would say. And they certainly are stepping up. We are
We are stepping up.
stepping up. And if there is a Black woman in the White House, do you think there's a likely prospect of that?
Why not?
Well,
Why not? I'm ready for it. I think this country is ready for it. And I think Black women have been called in to clean up messes for so long. Why not now?
whoa, okay,
So
all right.
I think we're ready.
I hope you're going to run. I'm going to sign on to your campaign. You know, we'll
Thank
be
you. I
working
appreciate
for you.
it.
Thank you so much, Jamira
Thank you.
Burley, for being with us. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. We will see you the next time. Thanks for being with us today. You're great.
Thank you for having me.